check. All right, I might use this. This is better. All right, how's everyone doing? My name's Ethan Walker, and as you can see on the slide, I'm from Monolith Productions up in Seattle. And obviously, I'm going to talk a little bit about Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, but first, I'll just give you a quick overview of some of the stuff we're going to talk about. I apologize if some of this is a little too technical. Obviously, there's a lot of writers, and I love you guys, but I'm also going to talk about stuff like performance capture and a little bit about previs and some of our facial pipeline. I think this stuff is still valuable, and hopefully I stay at a high enough level that it's a value to you guys. And of course, key takeaways. I think that's just a bullet that came with PowerPoint. So, and last but not least, we will have Ron Swanson. He'll make an appearance. So here we go. For those of you who don't know me, I'll just give you a little backstory. I kind of grew up in the 90s when the NES was very popular, and I kind of remember this formative experience I had where I first kind of discovered narrative games, and up until that point, I certainly wasn't as cool as Will Smith. I was kind of more like this guy here. And I was into action games, Mega Man, and Ghouls and Goblins, and Dragon Quest, but I never really played what you'd call a pure story game. And then one day, my friend Mike came up to me and said, "My dad got this Commodore Amiga. It's amazing. You got to come check it out." So all I knew about it was that it was like the holy grail of gaming. It could display 256 colors, and it had some amount of RAM, and it was 10 times faster than my NES. I think the thing I didn't realize is that it also was 10 times slower to load anything. If this looks familiar to some of you guys. So he had this box, this game he bought that day, and we were sitting there waiting for it to load. And luckily, it turned out to be worth the wait because, a little trivia question for those of you in the audience, it was actually the number 2 best-selling game in the year of 1990, and it was a point-and-click adventure game from LucasArts. Any guesses? Shout something else out. Secret of Monkey Island. Nobody? Hell yeah, there he is. Yeah, and that's what I felt like too, hell yeah. And so we started playing at 8 o'clock, pretty soon it's like midnight, 2 a.m., and I was just so drawn in because, for the first time, this was an experience that was written for my audience. This wasn't some poorly translated product from overseas. This had a rich cast of hilarious characters doing interesting things in ridiculous situations, and I just kind of fell in love. And at one point, as the sun was coming up and I'm still playing this game, I kind of had this delirious realization that for the first time, I wasn't playing a game because I wanted to clear a level or defeat the next boss. I was really engaged on a deeper level. I was invested in helping this 20-pixel high representation of a character named Guybrush Threepwood become a pirate. And that was even if it took 2 minutes to load the next screen. So I went on to play a ton of adventure games in the 90s, and it really kind of changed things. And I'm sure a lot of you are like, we'll get to the point, how's this relevant? Well, I actually think it's pretty relevant because a lot of the things that were established in the adventure game genre as a whole, certainly in its day, defined a lot of the key attributes of narrative-focused experiences we still create today. To create compelling characters, with dimensionality and appeal and authenticity, and to create interesting worlds for those characters to react to, interact with, and of course, build stories around. So you saw a little preview, but it's not entirely surprising that a decade later, I would land my first job at Sierra, working on some of the same franchises we all grew up with, like Gabriel Knight and King's Quest. And I've been really lucky to work on a lot of story-focused products throughout my career, including, of course, our most recent title at Monolith, working as a cinematic lead on Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. So for those of you that aren't really familiar with the product, I thought I would bring a story trailer that just shows a little bit of the game, specifically some of our key cinematic characters, obviously the main character, Talion, who plays a sort of unwilling host to a very old and very powerful elf from Middle-earth's history. So have a look. Hello, sound. Cry face. Nothing. Any luck back there, sound engineer? Well, that's too bad. Perhaps that pain is what connects us. It's my best Celebrimbor, I swear. There's this guy. So I'll go ahead and skip ahead, and maybe it'll be fixed for the next example. Just looking back, I want to walk through some of the context to just give you a backdrop of where Monolith was at the time when we took on this project. It was pretty much a new frontier, certainly for the team that I was part of, the cinematics team, but also for the whole studio. Our first third-person open-world game, our own next-gen engine, and really just the biggest one was the scope and the quality bar that we were looking to hit was far and above anything we'd attempted before. And then the little thing called Nemesis System, which I won't dive into. It's deserves all the praise it's gotten, and there's plenty of other talks to go do about that. So digging into the cinematics specifically, I'll just kind of outline the parameters and the scope of what we were trying to achieve. Sort of a feature-length film equivalent to about 90 minutes. Not super long for games, at least narratively focused games today, but long enough given our timeline. We were going to do full body and facial capture, large custom set pieces, creature heavy. We rebooted our story about 8 months before it started. We only had 6 months to get it done. You get the idea. It's every game you've ever heard of. Super hard, super rough timeline, and you just move forward. So enough of the numbers. Let's talk a little bit about the guy I did a horrible job impersonating, which is Celebrimbor. And what you saw in the trailer, or at least didn't hear but saw, was just a little bit about how we treated him visually. But when we started early on, we didn't have a clear idea of how we were going to solve some of the issues, specifically relegating the sort of disparity between the game experience where he takes over Talion in the first person and in the cinematic experience where we knew we wanted to show him in the third person, conversing with Talion and still being consistent with that presentation on the game side. The other thing we wanted to do was kind of show, without spelling it out, some of the rules that Celebrimbor had. I mean, we all know, kind of Casper and some of these ghost stories, hopefully not Ghost the movie, but we wanted to show kind of the way he interacted with other characters like Gollum, like Marwyn, for those of you who played the game, but just these other rule sets in his fiction without spelling everything out. And then the last one is sort of maintaining the stakes. This speaks to Talion's mortality. If you haven't played the game, Talion dies in the beginning, spoiler alert, and the Wraith takes over his body. So it was important to us to continue to show that without Celebrimbor, Talion was just this corpse, and of course with him, he's a lot more. And without Talion, Celebrimbor is just a disembodied Wraith floating through Arda. So I have a quick montage. Let's hope it makes noise, and if it doesn't, I will not narrate.
We are friends.
Take us to it.
Yes. Come. This way. Come on.
We're lucky to have you.
These are not your people, Talion. Remember your wife and son.
Do not resist me, Celebrimbor.
Together we can be invincible.
So you can kind of see the different ways we treated some of those narrative ideas. And then one thing I wanted to just call attention to was the second interstitial there. CB says, that was our shortcut name for Celebrimbor, because it's 3 syllables is too hard apparently. But Celebrimbor says, remember your wife and son. And I just wanted to mention that because one of the things Christian Cantamesa, who wrote the script, and certainly the team was very aware of, was in an open world experience, you just don't know where those touch points are. You can't guarantee how many times the player's checking in with your narrative. So while it may seem heavy-handed on the surface, it was actually important to us to continue to kind of remind the player of those stakes and check in. And so that was one of the ways that we tackled that. Just as a trivia point, I thought TV is a pretty brilliant way of handling this, and pretty much it's been picked up by every serialized drama that you watch on TV today, and it's this previously on bit that they get away with. It works tremendously well. So this picture is from our rehearsal stage, and I used it to just kind of kick off the discussion about pre-production. And the reason I wanted to show it, it's Phil LaMarr, and there's Christian and Troy, and it's such a cool, creative place to get to, and it's sort of the meat and the soul of kind of developing a cool performance and a great story. But in order to get there, you really have to know what you're making and why you're making it. And even simpler things like where does it take place and what does that look like? So that brings us to kind of pre-production. And some of the just high-level bullet points related to that. Obviously communication, right? We use it to show the actors this might be what the scene's about. The director certainly, but also for us internally, it became extremely valuable to kind of show other people on the team, hey, this scene takes place here, here's kind of the flow of the game. For some of our realization folks who handled ins and outs, it would just be valuable for them to get an idea of context. So that was super useful for us. Also, this is just the cheapest place to do anything. If you've written a scene and you want to try it out, you put it in an animatic, you get someone's crappy voiceover as scratch audio, and you kind of know what you have more than you ever have before. So that's super valuable. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the agile capture thing, but pretty much it's just about getting information in one format, right? So it's a video that you can watch, you can share with anybody, and they get the scene, hopefully. And then the last thing is just about stakeholders. Obviously an IP like Middle-earth comes with a very thorough vetting of all the content, and just the clearest way to demonstrate anything is by showing and not telling. So I put together just 2 clips of the same scene to show you guys from an animatic stage to start and then the final scene, and you'll kind of see where we pivoted a little bit on the action for Talion.
Go back to him.
Cool. So you kind of have one idea, and then you show up on the stage, and everyone else gets involved, and you might develop that into, hopefully, a better idea. Which kind of takes us to the capture stage. And again, I'm going to try and keep it to just 3 high-level bullets that were the takeaways for us anyway. Obviously, every project's a little different. This is basically where all your hard work pays off, right? And again, back to the agility. So this is really about getting the other key creatives the room and the freedom to sort of add their spin on it or really bring their expertise to it. When you have guys that just do this every day for a living and they can be the characters and try things creatively that you never thought of, you want to give them those options. And the more you know about the scene and what you can get away with and what you can't, the better prepared those folks are to help you out. And then the last note is really a technical note. So obviously we had a lot of creatures. We had these 12-foot tall Graugs, and we had black captains that are like 9 feet. We had Sauron himself, and I think it became pretty clear early on. I know our Nathan Hendrickson, who's the head of our department, was just like, we shouldn't even be trying this stuff, right? This is what animators are for. These guys are just never going to work, no matter how much you kind of mock it up with plywood and foam core. So this kind of takes us up to where we were in terms of achieving some of our key goals on the character development side. So we kind of had all of our capture data. We're back in Seattle. The game is taking shape, and then we're kind of off in our world developing the performances and the tech to support it. So what you see here is Talion and Ratbag, and the reason I showed Ratbag is because our orcs initially had a bone-based animation system, and this was pretty powerful. I mean, they were looking really good, but some of our characters just had, I would say, a higher fidelity requirement. And really what this is about is some of these key franchise characters like Gollum just have a built-in performance expectation from the audience. And so we kind of hemmed and hawed, and we did everything we could with Bones, and then we went to our engineers, and this is in the kind of the 11th hour, and we said, can we get, blend shapes? And they kind of looked at us like we're crazy. And they couldn't get a real-time solution, but they came up with something kind of ingenious that they called their shape exporter, and this was essentially just a cloud of vertex points that allowed us to get the real high-fidelity animation into the game. And we ended up using this stuff for kind of everything. This is just an image unrelated to the game, but it sort of exemplifies how the tech works, right? So it's just a series of points that can represent everything from Gollum. We used it on his body. We used it for cloth. Any deformable organic surface, we kind of cheated and threw this stuff in there. It became pretty useful for us. It was kind of resource intensive. The beginning of the game, the family killing sequence, I think has 11 gigs of this stuff in it, so heavy clouds. And this just shows you a little bit where we landed in terms of the generation for Gollum's extremes. And we had an expert who actually worked on the Lord of the Rings franchise, in Keith Huggins, and he was pretty critical in developing not only the pipeline, but then just the look and the accuracy of Gollum. So I brought along a quick clip that showed kind of where Keith landed in terms of the performance itself.
He will remember Precious. We will make him.
Yes, yes, yes. We must have it back. We must have it.
Quiet. Quiet, Precious.
That's pretty awesome. So the last thing I'll just touch on is kind of the post process, which for us really, with films, it looks like you've got all of this film and you're going to edit a movie together, and it all just works, right? You cut it together. But on games, you have all these disparate pieces of information: the body data, the facial data, the audio. You have the live action video. You have the markered capture. You have sound effects. You have effect, right? The list just keeps on going, and so I just wanted to kind of touch on how we manage that much data. And the short of it is, and that's why it's just one slide, is it's tons and tons of notes and tons of reviewing. And we ended up with a system where we had actually we had two of them, these render machines that would go out, they'd scrape our Perforce server, they'd grab the game, and then they would render overnight because it was pretty time intensive, the scenes that we were gonna review the next morning. And so we generated about 15,000 of these and did over 2,000 notes based on those renders. And that was really just kind of the critical piece for staying ahead of that metric I mentioned earlier, that 6-month deadline. I mean, without this, we couldn't have done it. So I think whenever you're creating content at a high quality, you need a review iteration loop that looks fast and allows you to react quickly. And despite all that, I just wanted to show a scene that actually didn't make it into the game. This scene worked on the page, and the goals were sound. We were trying to increase kind of the stakes between Talion and one of the other Golden Path characters, Hirgon, and it worked great. And then you get to a point in production where you kind of decide that it either doesn't serve the greater story or it makes sense maybe somewhere else. In this case, we decided to take it out, but I thought I'd bring it here just because it's fun to kind of see and gives you a little glimpse maybe why we made the choices we did.
Well done. See to the others. Talion, I'm sorry we were not here sooner.
You knew the Black Hand was never here. You lured me!
And I would do it again.
Come on!
Wait. It's my wife. While we're here, she was taken.
No more of your
I
lies.
swear on my life, I don't even know if she's still alive.
Then neither of us have found what we're looking for today.
Talion, wait. It's not over. Fight with us. We could stage an insurrection. We could make the Dark Lord come to us.
Go back home to your people, Hirgon.
If you really want the Black Hand, you know where to find me.
Hey! You there! Little help? Ranger! You seek the Black Hand! Ratbag can help you!
The great Phil Lamar there. So, and that kind of wraps up the bulk of what I wanted to talk about. And I'll leave you with just a couple quote slides, because we all love quote slides. The first is pretty appropriate. It's from Mr. Tolkien himself. And I just actually think it does speak to kind of the spirit and passion of everyone in our industry and in this room even. I think we truly do face our fears when we sketch out a storyboard or write a line of dialogue or write a line of code. And I think if we dodge those fears, soon enough we'll find ourselves opening our computer back up and facing them again. That sort of speaks to the perseverance of this industry. And the last quote is just as appropriate from Mr. Swanson. And really, to me, this just says, you know, don't get hung up on issues or missteps or even process. You know, just keep moving forward. Believe in your idea and whole ass everything that you do. Thanks a lot, and have a great conference.